It was probably the biggest failure of my career. We landed at 14.5 million, 58% of quota, worst performing quota attainment year of my career. And needless to say, I was devastated.
Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns Raw Stories Live from Las Vegas. I'm Simon Kutis, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And it's with great pleasure that we introduce you to David Habibian. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate you guys. This is my favorite podcast, video cast. I love the CXO series. I love the channel series. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, you've got very good taste. David, by way of an introduction, you are VP Americas of Channel and Alliances over at Rubrik.
Yes, sir.
And today, we're going to talk about what you believe is the single attribute which has helped you get to leadership more than anything else, right?
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting topic, Simon, because I think you have a lot of high-performing sales reps and individual contributors who always think, if I crush my quota year after year, I'm going to be a leader one day. They're going to pick me out of the group and promote me. I'll tell you, sometimes that happens, but oftentimes it's the other attributes. And for me, I'd love to talk to you about the story that helped me get into leadership and has continued to help me grow over the years.
So I believe this story starts with you taking a new role in a completely different it's a completely different domain for you, right? So take us to that moment.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you back to 2015 when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I joined Cisco Meraki at the time, and they hired me to be the first rep in the United States to build a service provider business. Now, I'll tell you, I didn't know what service provider meant. I had no clue what managed services were. Honestly, to this day, I don't know what they saw in me that decided, that we're going to hire this guy to go take on this challenge. But I took on the challenge. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? And this is a theme throughout my career. And kudos to my ex-boss, Stephen Koza, actually a CEO over at EverOps now, awesome leader. But he took me under his wing and he taught me about service providers, how they go to market, really slow, but want to drive some innovation and disruptiveness. And together we identified a handful of deals that I started to build my pipeline around, but eventually started to build some good pipeline momentum. And mind you, with 2 weeks before the end of the fiscal year, we closed a $14.6 million deal, biggest deal in company history. And yours truly goes from zero to hero overnight, right? And I was on top of the world, ecstatic. Actually, here in Vegas, the entire sales team gave me a standing ovation. I was blown away. And, it gets to you, kind of gets to your ego and confidence. But here's the funny thing, and I think all the folks in sales and quota carrying would agree, whenever you have a blowout year, what happens to your quota the next year? Yeah, they double it. And so in my case, they just about tripled it. I went from 8 million to 25 million the next year. So needless to say, tall task. And you put yourself in the shoes of a salesperson. When you get a big quota at the beginning of the year, you're thinking, can I make money? Should I stay here? Should I look at the next company? Does this make sense? But I was only 7 months into the role. And so I had no choice. I needed to stay the course. So I decided to focus, right? 25 million, how am I going to get there? I revolved my entire life around the number 25. Wake up, 6:25, 25 push-ups. Go to the gym, run for 25 minutes, 25 pull-ups. I had sticky notes everywhere. I'd get in the office early, I'd leave late. And so that grind started to be something that people took note of, and that wasn't my objective. I just needed to figure out how to hit this number, right? And so I started to mobilize the people around me, get my executives involved, get our product teams involved, get our cross-functional marketing teams involved, you name it, SEs, etc. We needed to figure out how to get to 25 million collectively. Fast forward to the end of the year, I'll let you guys take a guess. Where do you think we ended the year?
24 and a half.
I wish. So it was probably the biggest failure of my career. We landed at 14.5 million, 58% of quota, worst performing quota attainment year of my career. And needless to say, I was devastated. And don't get me wrong, I had built a $50, $60 million pipeline, but it didn't all close. And so I thought this was going to be a moment where they let go of me, they fire me, I don't have referrals for my next job, my career's over, basically. And so I walk into our end of year party with my tail between my legs, and I'm not sure what's going to come out of the next few weeks. I go up to our VP of sales, a guy named Pete Atkin, actually excellent leader. Pete went over to Samsara, became the GM at Samsara, helped take them public. I think he's a CRO now over at Mashkin. Awesome leader. Shout to you, Pete. I went up to Pete and I said, hey man, I know you had $1 billion objective this year. We missed it by about 30 million, and 10 of that was me. And if you want to fire me, I understand. He looked at me and smiled, which was a little funny to see. And he said, we're not going to fire you. He put his arm around me and he said, in fact, quite the contrary, we're thinking about considering you for a leadership role. So I was blown away, right? Like, what? Is this a joke? Has he had a lot to drink? What's going on? And so I'm kind of dumbfounded, no words to speak. And he kind of walks me through his observation of me. He said, you know what? We gave you a big challenge. The challenge was go hit 25 million. You got everybody involved. You stayed focused. You were never emotional. You were never erratic. In the midst of crisis and chaos, you stayed structured and you maintained temperament. And it was that one word, temperament, that stuck with me. And he said, that's what we look for in leaders. And he said, I think you did a fantastic job. So anyways, that's kind of the gist of the story. And I'll tell you what happens later. But in that moment, you know, a little bit of a shocking moment for me in my career.
Yeah. I could imagine. It's an incredible story. I actually want to, understand. Obviously, you're projecting all of these traits that, which your managers obviously picked up on. But what's going on inside? At that point, the moment that you've been delivered this target, which is almost 3 times what it was the previous year, what is it that's actually going through your mind?
Yeah, there's a rational side and there's an emotional side. The rational side is, I got to go build 70 million plus in pipeline. I've got to build a structured business plan. There's an emotional side that's, holy crap, what did I get myself into, right? And this is destined for failure. And there's no way I'm going to get to this point. Talking to peers and mentors and my wife and you name it, trying to get advice and inspiration, right? And so a lot of people, I think, get knocked down. I think most of us do in sales. It's a matter of how you get back up and how you charge ahead. And I just had to decide how to objectively and in a structured fashion charge ahead. I had no time to be stressed or emotional, at least not outward, but inward, it's a battle going on. Yeah.
So take us through that process of, the rationalization of that. Is that you turn to peers to look at how we go and do this to get validation? Do you look at the playbook? What is it you're looking at to try and, confuse that?
Really good question. So what I found that's been a successful kind of consistent ingredient in my career is, how do I rally everybody around a common goal? And in this case, the common goal was hitting 25 million. And that's substantial. In that year, I carried the biggest quota of anyone in the company. So it mattered, and I needed to assume that it mattered. So I would go to our head of product management, Raj Krishna. He's a senior VP over at Zscaler now. Shout to you. And I would say, Raj, we need to build the products and solutions for these SBs to get us to 25 million. I'd go to the legal team. We need to figure out how to build contracts to extend things like exclusivity to partners so that they spend big dollars with us and purchase things that are unique and differentiated. I'd go to marketing. We need to build the demand gen and structured integrated marketing activities to get us to the pipeline we need to hit, 25 million in revenue. I made everyone's goals my goals and built an operating rhythm around it, right? And ultimately, you can hold folks accountable to their part of it. So that being said, we didn't hit the number, but in the process, even at 14.5 million, I was the second highest producing rep in the company. So still, by various degrees, a pretty solid year.
That's a very, very mature approach to realize I need to go and pull these resources in. How did you have clarity in your mind that this is the strategy that I need to be going after.
Especially when it's a customer in an area that you've had zero experience.
Yeah, it took a while to get to clarity, you know, and needless to say, you go through a whole slew of emotions. Initially, you're, hey, this is an insurmountable mountain. Do I want to go complain to my boss that this quota is unrealistic? Do I want that to be my reputation? Nah, you kind of push it aside, right? Do I want to consider a career change, right? Hey, I just got a big commission check. I could go leverage that. My trade value is high. 7 months, I closed a mega deal, but then I have to answer a lot of questions. Why are you changing after 7 months? If things are going so great, why are you hopping? So you go through all these thought processes, and in the midst of that, you ask people for advice, and the collection of advice was always, Habibs, you've got this. Figure it out. Build the strategy. Charge ahead. You've never been one to be afraid of a challenge. Rise to the occasion. Make that your reputation. So, yeah, you go through that cycle of emotions, and it beats you up. And don't get me wrong, when I'd wake up and do 25 push-ups, 25 pull-ups, it was in my mind. I'm on this journey. I've committed to it. Stick with it, right? I never wanted quitting to be associated with my reputation, so I stayed the course.
How did you respond to being almost the golden child or the golden goose that's just going to keep giving? How did you deal with that reputation, and then how did you manage that?
There's probably two things. Excellent question, Simon. So one is, if I'm the hero, I can't go back to being the imposter, because then they might think that I just had a stroke of luck, right? Mega deal. Where did it come from? Did he actually work it? I didn't want that talk track to materialize in any way. So that was one piece. How do I stay on top of this reputation and keep executing? The second piece was, you have people walking around the office, and I'm the hero. They want to high-five me every time they see me. What's up, Habibs? What's the next big deal you're working on? Yeah, I'm working on it. You know, it's coming. Wait for it, right? But I knew in my heart of hearts that, gosh, I have no clue how I'm going to get there. So it's a matter of just trusting, having faith, stay in the course, right? And it's kind of, you know, we say this in American terminology, fake it till you make it, right? But, you know, I needed to embed that in my mindset. I had no time to be emotional and tell people, hey, it's a bad year, actually. I don't know if I could repeat it. It's no time for that. I just needed to stay focused and, to Pete's point, maintain the temperament.
So what is that attribute? Obviously, at the start of this session, we spoke about there is one attribute that really made you the leader that you are today. So what is that attribute?
Yeah.
Define that.
It comes down to, in the midst of crisis, in the midst of chaos, can you maintain poise? Can you maintain temperament? Stay focused. Because there's always going to be chaos. There's always going to be crisis. Let me give you an analogy that surfaced. Envision you're on the Titanic, and there's an iceberg out in the distance. You're the captain of the ship. You got two ways you can respond to this, right? One is yell out, we're all gonna die. Complete chaos ensues. Every man and woman for themselves, and it's erratic behavior. There's no organization, and the inevitable will materialize. The alternative is you get structured, you get focused, you delegate and assign tasks. Hey, you get on the wheel, you slow down the engines, you hit the rudders. We're gonna get through this. You inject some inspiration, you stay focused, there's no time for emotion, debate, and that's the type of person that people will follow. I think the key thing is everybody wants to be a leader, but in order to be a leader, people need to follow you. And if you can, in the midst of that crisis, show your temperament, they'll follow you. Let me end with this thought. It's a great book, Ride of a Lifetime, Bob Iger, CEO of Disney. He talks about all the challenges that Disney goes through, and his consistent theme is temperament through chaos. Excellent book for anyone who wants to follow up and dive deeper on the topic, but I'll tell you, that's how I've built kind of my leadership focus. How do I remain calm and focus on the outcome? And I think that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's a great story. It's a great story, an inspiration one at that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the point where we reflect. And I think what's interesting is a couple of things here. I think on the first, your attribute of poise and calmness in chaos. But I think there's another thing that really underpins that, which is ownership as well. And I think it's one thing having poise, but poise towards what? And I think at every stage, you said, I own this, it's on me, I'm gonna make sure that I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to bring these resources in. I'm going to focus my efforts on this. And it's ownership and poise, and that combination, which I think is the real kind of undercurrent of what's given you the outcome that you have. So David, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. If I could put a bow on this, funny enough, I never got promoted at Meraki. We're talking through it. They're looking at leadership positions, but there's a Scottish lady who used to sit next to me at Meraki. I think you all know her very well, Ghazal Asif. She left over and went to App Dynamics working for Dolly Reich, and she called me. She had the same observations of my temperament and poise, and ultimately gave me my first role in leadership. And I work for her today at Rubrik, so brings it full circle. But I appreciate you guys having me on. Awesome to be with you, and yeah, thanks so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to all our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you like what you've heard, please do subscribe to our various channels on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are in the description below, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another session very soon. Take care.
That was
Nay.
wicked.
Yeah.